Trust is the most dangerous gift you can give. I trusted my son, I trusted his wife, and that trust almost cost me my life. What happened on my 65th birthday still chills me to the bone. Hello, I'm Ethel Montgomery. What I'm about to tell you is a story that still gives me chills, even years later. It's a story about how the people closest to you can become your greatest threat, and how sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. This is the story of my 65th birthday, the day I almost died, and the betrayal that nearly cost me everything. They say birthdays are meant to be celebrations of life. For me, my 65th birthday was almost the day my life ended. Not from old age or illness, but from something far more sinister. Something that came wrapped in family bonds and seasoned with love that had turned deadly. My name is actually Celeste Montgomery, not Ethel as I introduced myself. But I've learned that sometimes we need new identities to survive our old ones. The morning of April 23rd started like any other day in my modest townhouse in Riverside. The sun streamed through my kitchen windows as I prepared my usual breakfast of oatmeal and coffee. I remember feeling unusually tired, a heaviness in my limbs that had been growing more pronounced over the past several months. My son Marcus had been telling me it was just age catching up with me, that perhaps I should consider moving into one of those nice assisted living facilities. "Mom, you're not as sharp as you used to be," he'd say with that concerned look in his eyes. "Yesterday, you couldn't remember where you put your car keys, and last week you forgot our dinner date entirely." The thing is, I have been forgetting things. Small things at first, then bigger ones. I'd find myself standing in rooms with no memory of why I'd entered them. I'd lose track of conversations mid-sentence. It frightened me more than I cared to admit. Because my greatest fear wasn't death, it was losing my mind, becoming a burden. Fading away piece by piece until nothing of me remained, Marcus had married Allison 3 years earlier, and I'd welcomed her into our family with open arms. She was a certified nursing assistant who worked at various care facilities around town, and she seemed to genuinely care about elderly people. "That's what drew me to Marcus," she told me once, holding my hand with what felt like genuine warmth. "He has such respect for his elders, such love for you. It shows what kind of man he really is." Allison was attentive, always asking about my health, suggesting I see doctors for various ailments I hadn't even noticed. She'd bring me little gifts, help organize my medications, and offer to drive me to appointments when Marcus was busy with work. On the morning of my birthday, Allison called around 10 o'clock. "Happy birthday, Mom Celeste." She chirped into the phone. She'd started calling me Mom about a year ago, which had touched me deeply at the time. "Marcus and I want to take you somewhere special for dinner tonight. That new Italian place downtown, Benedetto's. You love Italian food, and they have the most beautiful ambiance. We'll pick you up at 6. I remember feeling a flutter of happiness. It had been weeks since we'd done something together as a family, and I was looking forward to the celebration. "That sounds wonderful, dear. Should I dress up?" "Oh yes, definitely dress up. Wear that beautiful blue dress we bought you last month. The one that brings out your eyes." Her voice was warm, loving even. "And Mom, make sure you take your evening medications before we go. You know how important it is to stay on schedule." Allison had been helping me manage my medications for the past 6 months. I'd been prescribed several new drugs for various conditions, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, anxiety, and the routine had become complex. Little white pills, blue capsules, yellow tablets, all organized in a weekly pill dispenser that Allison had bought for me. "We can't have you missing doses or taking too many," she'd said. "These heart medications are very serious. Too much or too little could be dangerous." At 5:30, I took my evening medications as instructed, then put on the blue dress and my mother's pearl necklace. When Marcus and Allison arrived, they seemed unusually cheerful, almost giddy. Marcus hugged me tightly and said, "You look beautiful, Mom. Absolutely radiant." Allison linked her arm through mine and said, "This is going to be such a special night. I just have a feeling about it." Benedetto's was everything Allison had promised. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, the gentle sound of Italian music playing in the background. The hostess led us to a corner table that felt intimate and private. Marcus pulled out my chair with a flourish, and Allison sat across from me, her eyes bright with what I interpreted as excitement for my birthday celebration. "I'd like to propose a toast," Marcus said once our wine had been poured. He raised his glass of red wine, and Allison lifted hers as well. My glass sat before me, the deep burgundy liquid reflecting the candlelight. "To my wonderful mother, who has given me everything, who taught me the meaning of love and sacrifice. May this new year bring you peace and happiness." As I reached for my wine glass, something strange happened. Our waitress, a young African-American woman with kind eyes, approached our table with what seemed like urgency. "Excuse me," she said, her voice low but insistent. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem with this wine. We've had some bottles that were compromised during shipping. Let me get you a fresh glass from a different batch." Before I could protest, she whisked my wine glass away. Allison's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's really not necessary," she said to the waitress. "I'm sure the wine is fine." "Oh, but we can't take any chances," the waitress replied firmly. "Especially not for such a special birthday celebration." She returned moments later with a new glass. Placing it in front of me with a small, meaningful smile, we ordered our meals, and the conversation flowed naturally. Marcus told stories about his work at the engineering firm. Allison shared amusing anecdotes from her job at the nursing home, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. But I noticed something odd. Allison kept encouraging me to drink my wine. "Come on, Mom Celeste, it's your birthday. Live a little," she'd say, raising her own glass. "This Chianti is supposed to be exceptional." I took small sips, but something felt off. The wine tasted slightly bitter, with an unusual metallic aftertaste that I couldn't quite place. When Allison excused herself to use the restroom, I found myself alone with Marcus for the first time in weeks. "Son," I said, reaching across the table to touch his hand, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Do you really think I'm losing my memory? Do you think I'm getting dementia?" Marcus looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting toward the restroom where Allison had disappeared. "Mom, it's not that simple. You have been having some issues lately. Forgetting things, getting confused. Allison thinks maybe we should talk to a doctor about it, maybe explore some options for assisted living just to be safe." "What kind of options?" I pressed. "Well, there's this place called Sunset Manor. It's very nice, very expensive, but they specialize in memory care. Allison knows the administrator there, and she thinks you'd be happy. They have activities, medical care on site, everything you need." A chill ran down my spine. "And how would we pay for such an expensive place?" Marcus looked even more uncomfortable. "Well, you'd need to liquidate some assets. The house, your investments, Dad's life insurance policy. Allison has been helping me understand your finances, and she thinks it would be the responsible thing to do." My heart began to race. My husband had left me well provided for when he died 8 years ago. The house was paid off, I had substantial savings, and his life insurance policy was worth nearly $500,000. The idea that I might need to give all of that up for a nursing home I didn't need terrified me. When Allison returned to the table, she seemed agitated. "Is everything all right?" she asked, looking between Marcus and me. "We were just talking about Mom's living situation," Marcus said. Allison's smile returned, but it seemed forced now. Oh, yes, I think Sunset Manor would be perfect for you, Mom Celeste. And don't worry about the finances. Marcus and I have looked into everything. We just need you to sign some papers giving us power of attorney so we can help manage your affairs when the time comes. The waitress appeared again, this time to refill our wine glasses. As she poured, she leaned close to me and whispered so quietly I almost missed it. Don't drink the wine. Trust me, my blood please don't drink it. I looked at my wine glass and moved to the next table as if nothing had happened. Asterisk. The terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. Without thinking, I reached across the table and said, Allison, dear, let's switch glasses. I'd like to try yours. It looks different somehow. Oh, that's not necessary, she said quickly, her hand moving to protect her glass. They're the same wine from the same bottle. I insist, I said firmly, already reaching for her glass. Humor an old woman on her birthday. What happened next changed everything. Before Allison could stop me, I had switched our glasses. She looked panicked for just a moment, then composed herself. Well, if you insist, she said with a strained laugh. Cheers to your birthday. We all raised our glasses, and I watched as Allison reluctantly took a large sip from what had been my wine glass. I pretended to drink from hers, but kept the liquid away from my lips. Within minutes, Allison's face began to change. She grew pale, then flushed, then pale again. I don't feel well, she said, her voice becoming slurred. Something's wrong. I feel dizzy, nauseous. Her hand went to her chest. My heart is racing. Something's very wrong. Marcus jumped up in alarm. Should I call an ambulance? Yes, I said firmly, though part of me wanted to see what would happen if we waited. Call 911 right now. The paramedics arrived within minutes. As they worked on Allison, who was now vomiting violently and showing signs of cardiac distress, one of them asked what she had consumed. I told them about the wine, and they immediately took samples. The waitress, whose name I learned was Jada, stayed close by and quietly told the paramedics about the suspicious wine glass switch dot at the hospital. The emergency room doctor delivered news that confirmed my worst fears. Your daughter-in-law has been poisoned, he told Marcus and me. Specifically with digoxin, a heart medication. In the amount she ingested, it would have been fatal for someone her size. For someone older or existing heart conditions, it would have killed them within hours. Marcus stared at the doctor in shock. But how is that possible? We were just having dinner. I looked at my son, this man I had raised and loved unconditionally, and realized he had no idea what had been happening. Marcus, I said gently, I think we need to talk to the police. The investigation moved quickly once it began. Jada, our waitress, came forward with information that broke the case wide open. Her grandmother had died 6 months earlier at the nursing home where Allison worked. The death had been ruled natural, but Jada had always been suspicious. My grandmother was healthy, she told the detectives. She was 91 but sharp as a tack. Then suddenly she started having heart problems, getting confused, forgetting things. When I saw your daughter-in-law encouraging you to drink that wine, and saw how nervous she got when I took it away, I knew something was wrong. My grandmother described a woman who looked just like her. Someone who was always pushing extra medications, always being helpful with managing pills. The police obtained a warrant to search Allison's belongings. What they found was damning. Vials of digoxin, detailed notes about dosages and timing, and most chilling of all, a notebook documenting her systematic poisoning of elderly patients. My name was on the last page, with notations about my medications, my assets, and a timeline that ended with my projected death date 3 weeks after my birthday dot under interrogation. Allison's facade crumbled completely. She confessed not just to attempting to murder me, but to the deaths of 4 elderly patients at various nursing homes where she had worked. Her method was always the same: gradual poisoning with heart medications, convincing family members that their loved one was declining mentally, then either inheriting money directly or manipulating the family into financial arrangements that benefited her. She was so smart about it, the detective explained to Marcus and me later. She'd choose victims who were isolated, whose families weren't very involved. She'd become indispensable to them, gain their trust, then slowly poison them while making it look like natural decline. With you, Mrs. Montgomery, she had the added advantage of being married to your son. She convinced him you were developing dementia, that you needed expensive care, that your assets needed to be liquidated. If she had succeeded in killing you, she and your son would have inherited everything, and no one would have questioned the death of a 65-year-old woman with documented heart problems and dementia. The hardest part wasn't learning about Allison's betrayal. It was watching my son grapple with the realization of what had been happening. Marcus was devastated. How could I not have known? He asked me over and over. How could I have been so blind? I was helping her kill you, and I didn't even know it. She's a professional manipulator, I told him. She chose victims carefully, and she chose family members who would be easy to deceive. You trusted your wife, and you were concerned about your mother. Those aren't character flaws, Marcus. They're signs of a good heart. The trial was swift. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Allison pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During her sentencing, she showed no remorse, no emotion at all. The judge called her a predator who preyed upon the most vulnerable members of our society, and noted that her medical training made her crimes particularly heinous. Recovery wasn't just physical. Though my body did need time to clear the toxins Allison had been feeding me for months, the emotional healing took much longer. I had to rebuild my relationship with my son, who was racked with guilt despite being a victim himself. I had to learn to trust again, to not see potential murderers in every helpful nurse or caring neighbor, but I also discovered strength I didn't know I had. I became an advocate for elder abuse awareness, speaking to community groups about the warning signs of financial exploitation and medical abuse. I worked with lawmakers to pass legislation requiring better background checks for home health workers and mandatory reporting of suspicious deaths in nursing facilities. JADA. The waitress who saved my life became like a granddaughter to me. She was studying criminal justice, inspired by her grandmother's death, and motivated by a desire to protect vulnerable people. I helped pay for her education, and she went on to become a detective specializing in elder abuse cases. Your quick thinking saved not just me, I told her at her graduation. You prevented Allison from killing who knows how many other people. 3 years have passed since that terrible birthday dinner. I still live in my townhouse, though I've made some modifications for safety and hired a housekeeper who comes twice a week. My memory is sharp, my health is good, and I've reclaimed my independence. Marcus and I have rebuilt our relationship, though it's different now. There's a sadness in him, a wariness that wasn't there before. He divorced Allison while she was awaiting trial, and has been in therapy to deal with the trauma of unwittingly participating in an attempted murder. I think about that night often, about how close I came to dying, not from old age or illness, but from the calculated cruelty of someone I trusted. I think about the other victims, the elderly people who died alone and afraid, probably never understanding what was happening to them. I think about their families, who mourn their loved ones never knowing they were murdered, but I also think about the power of intuition, about trusting that small voice inside that says something isn't right. I think about unexpected heroes like Jada, who risked her job and potentially her safety to warn a stranger. I think about the importance of staying connected, of not becoming so isolated that no one would notice if you slowly faded away. The most chilling aspect of Allison's crimes wasn't their brutality, it was their subtlety. She didn't use guns or knives or obvious violence. She used medicine, trust, and institutional indifference. She relied on the assumption that old people naturally decline, that memory loss and physical weakness are inevitable and unremarkable. She counted on families being too busy or too trusting to ask hard questions. Elder abuse is more common than most people realize. Financial exploitation, medical neglect, emotional manipulation, it happens in nursing homes, in private residences, in families like mine where love and concern can be weaponized against the very people they're meant to protect. The victims are often ashamed, isolated, or too mentally compromised to report what's happening. The perpetrators are often people in positions of trust, caregivers, family members, financial advisors who use their access and authority to exploit vulnerability. I was lucky. I had a son who, despite being manipulated, still included me in family activities. I had enough mental clarity left to recognize suspicious behavior. I had a stranger who cared enough about a fellow human being to take a risk on my behalf. Most importantly, I have the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time when Allison's carefully planned murder attempt went wrong. My 65th birthday taught me that survival sometimes depends not on strength or wisdom, but on chance, on the kindness of strangers, and on the courage to trust our instincts even when everyone around us says we're wrong. It taught me that the people who seem most caring can be the most dangerous, and that the greatest betrayals come wrapped in love. Today is my 68th birthday, and I'm celebrating it quietly at home with a few close friends, people I've come to trust, slowly and carefully. Marcus will stop by later with a small gift and an awkward hug. We're working on rebuilding what we lost, but some damage leaves permanent scars. I no longer fear growing old or losing my independence. I've learned that age doesn't automatically make us helpless, and that wisdom can be its own form of protection. I've learned to ask questions, to verify information, to maintain relationships beyond my immediate family. I've learned that staying alive sometimes requires more vigilance than we'd like to admit. If my story serves any purpose, I hope it's to remind people that elder abuse is real, it's common, and it can happen to anyone. Trust your instincts, ask questions, stay connected, and remember that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who smile the brightest and offer the most help. My name is Celeste Montgomery, though I introduce myself as Ethel because sometimes we need to become someone new to survive who we used to be. This is my story of betrayal, survival, and the unexpected grace that can emerge from the darkest moments of our lives.